Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Memorial Day weekend. We've got a great way to kickstart your summer off. We have Erik Therwanger with you, and Erik, good to see you, man.
It is great to see you. It's been a long time, Speed.
It has been a month, and we worked together at the Hawaii Association of Broadcasters
Yeah.
convention in lovely Honolulu, and we happened to be there during Spam Jam.
Spam Jam was absolutely phenomenal. I don't have my spam shirt on today, but we did do our promo video while I was wearing it and attending the event.
And prove once again that of all the canned salted meats, Spam is the best. So anyway,
They have 25,000 people showed up, so there's something going on there.
absolutely, absolutely. You've got a great topic today, and obviously we are always trying to teach the benefits of the client needs analysis and needs
Yeah.
assessment. Ask meaningful questions to get meaningful answers. Uh, why are sales questions so important?
I think there's so many reasons why they're important, but one of the number one reasons, in my opinion, having been in sales for I don't know, almost 30 years and mostly leading and managing sales professionals and in other industries, what I'm finding is that our sales questions really differentiate us from the competition. And in the world of sales, when you talk to salespeople about their questions, most of their sales questions tend to revolve around what they offer, their products or their services. But I think that we can go a lot deeper. And I think that elevating the sales questions in our arsenal, really helps us to stand out. And the reality is that our sales tools, of all the sales tools we have, the questions, we really have the opportunity to 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 wordsmith those, to get
Mhm.
them so we feel natural, sincere, genuine. There's a lot of antiquated ways of asking sales, and I think the buying market, buyers in general, are looking for a different type of question. So I think they're valuable on so many aspects. But I would say that differentiating us and putting us in control are two of the most important reasons.
Fantastic. It's a great topic. Look forward to hearing it. I got my
Yeah.
pen out. I'm going to be taking notes. So, Erik, she's yours to fly.
So, Speed, this is something that I have pondered for a long time, are sales questions. We ask questions when we're networking. We ask questions when we're contacting people, even if it's that first phone call. We may ask the question, are you available to meet? Which is huge. We should all be asking that. We'll come back to this. Maybe you can spark this one, but I always ask that question 3 weeks out. So I try and position myself to get a lot of great answers. And when I'm talking about contacting people, the questions are usually, do you have some time to get together face to face? I'd like to share with you what we're doing, learn more about your business. But I'll usually ask them if they have something in the next 3 weeks or so because their schedule tends to free up. Um, it's also hugely important when we're presenting. So if we look at some of the sales activities we do, we're going to prospect. That's us deciding who to contact. Then we're going to contact so we can set an appointment. Well, we have to ask some questions. But the bulk of our questions come when we're presenting, when we actually get face to face or Zoom to Zoom, if you will, and we've got to ask some questions there. And I've found that questions really come in a few different flavors. There's questions to build rapport, which is awesome. When you meet with somebody, you want to establish that there's at least the ability to communicate together, be on the same page with some things. So there's some rapport building questions. There's some questions to make sure that you've built relevancy into that. So we want to be relevant with our questions that we're asking the person. That's why we have to qualify our leads, but we got to design some questions to make sure that they understand when they're answering us, we're talking about things that they actually need, relevancy, meaning to them. And then also there's questions to build relationships. As we dive deeper into understanding our clients and our prospects, we've really got to look out for questions that get to the heart of who they are, not just what they do. So I think for everyone listening right now, it's always a good time to analyze your questions. The world has shifted, especially in the last 5 years. Buying habits have shifted, marketplaces have shifted, and we have to shift some of our questions so we're getting the best answers. Now, I have a I have an idea, and everybody says yes to this. When I ask this question, most sellers, most sales drivers say yes. And I ask the question, is buying an emotional decision? Well, most people who sell say, yes, it is. And I think you'd probably agree with that. It is emotional. Now, we can have all the logic and facts laid out in front of us, but eventually our emotions do take over, and most of our buying decisions are going to be based emotionally. So as you're listening right now, I would ask yourself this question. Do my current sales questions elicit an emotional response? And so we really want to look at that. If buying is an emotional decision, we got to find out where they are in that emotional spectrum with us. Are they really feeling it? Are they just listening to the facts that we're sharing? Because the reality is most salespeople make more statements than they ask questions. And so the questions are going to be a very important tool. And maybe you can relate to this, when I go into an organization and I coach the sales teams, and I do a process called a sales diagnostic, because we have our sales engine, everything we sell, our sales vehicle, which is what we sell. We want to drive that, but we have our sales engine, and the sales engine has all of our prospecting tools and contacting and follow-up and presenting tools. In order to fully drive our sales vehicle, I think it's important to review our questions. When I do these sales diagnostics, I will usually ask the sales leaders and the sales team to print out or show me their list of questions. Here's the crazy part. 95% of the organizations that I meet with the first time have no questions printed out. I'll ask them, I'll say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important are the questions we ask? And they say, it's a 10. And I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank your current questions? If a 10 means you have these best practice questions listed out, and they elicit emotional responses and help you to convert a prospect to a client. And they said, about a 2. So one of the things that I would recommend as an organization, or even if you're just an individual producer, is I would have a list of your best questions. And the questions have to be relevant and elicit an emotional response. Now, a lot of times our questions can be very generic, and that's a lot of the rapport building ones. You know, how long have you worked at this company? You know, tell me more about your role. Like, what does your role consist of? And so we're establishing kind of those icebreaker questions, but then we have to get into those relevancy questions. And I think that we really need to take time to craft these questions. I'm a big believer, and I was just in Mississippi for a week with Amanda Fontaine and all the broadcasters out there doing the week-long traveling sales seminar. And one of the things that stood out to all of the sections of sales professionals we trained were asking these questions to elicit an emotional response. And I feel that's so important, but we have to list them out and we have to base them on what we're offering. So in other words, I believe that everybody who sells probably have many things that you sell, but you want to look at what your big 3 are. Now, for me, as a coach, as a speaker, as a trainer, I focus predominantly on leading, planning, and selling. Those are my big 3. So a lot of my questions are going to revolve around leading, planning, and selling. That's not to say that I don't train on communication or team building. I have one-on-one coaching. I have other things. But my big 3, the one that I want everybody to know about me, are leading, planning, and selling. And so a lot of the questions I ask revolve around those big 3 capabilities of myself and my company, Think Great. And so, for instance, let's just say I wanted to get a sale, to generate a new client, and I was speaking to somebody about leadership, the importance of leadership. This is one of my capabilities. I might say to this business owner or business leader, I might say on a scale of 1 to 10, here's where the magic starts. Your 10 and 0 questions. So I'm going to ask something that's going to elicit a very high response, or should, because that's going to also help me qualify this person if they're a right fit for what I offer. So I'm going to ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is leadership development? In other words, how important is it that your people, all of them, even if they have no direct reports, show up thinking and acting like a leader? Almost every single business owner, business leader says the same thing. That's a 10. I love that idea. So we want to go from conceptual, here's how it feels. This is the emotional side. How important is it? They say a 10. And then I want to follow it up with a question to identify where they are on the implementation, the action they're taking. So somebody might say it's a 10 out of 10. I want everybody to think and act like a leader. Woo! Well, then I'm going to follow it up with, okay, that's a high score. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank your current leadership development program? Most leaders say, I don't have one. Or we do a little bit of leadership training. It might not be development. So they're going to answer it with a lower score. Let's just say they say a 2. All right. Well, they just said it's important like a 10, conceptual. Steptual, how they're doing it is a 2. Here's what I say to them. This is the relevancy side. I can help you with that, or I can fix that. And so just with 2 questions on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how is it actually going? Allows me to see where that gap is in something that they said is absolutely critical to them. And then I, in turn, can say, I can help you with that. I have a solution for that. I can fix that. And these are where, when you're getting your answers back from these questions, which that's the beauty of questions, we get to listen. We get to hear from our clients. Then you can tell them what's relevant that you offer. You know what I'm saying, Speed?
And I jumped in on this because I
Yeah.
witnessed you doing this in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And it is absolutely masterful on how you work that scale of 1 to 10, that 0 to 10. But because everybody, you're right, they're like 10. And then
They
when you
do.
say, okay, then tell me about, well, I got nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
can you go a little bit deeper on that with just to kind of fill in
Yeah.
some folks?
I think like when we were in Hawaii, one of the things that they brought up is a great question to ask for their clients or their prospects would be on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to reach more people? All right. Well, everybody said a 10. 10.
Yeah,
And then you
exactly.
could follow it up with, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is your current advertising or marketing or outreach doing for that? Or even social media reach? And most people would probably rank that pretty low because I think that when it comes to increasing reach, how many people are reaching or increasing revenue, almost everybody's going to say it's a 10. It's so important that we do that, but they may not have the how to there. And so when you're in radio or TV or digital, like the people were in Hawaii, then they can say, I can fix that. I can help you with that. I can support you getting closer to that 10. And so, I think that for me, I've refined my questions over the year and for my own products and services. I've customized them to ask it where it's natural for me. And I think if the audience listening today can create a 10 and a 0 question, like that follow-up question after they say how important it is for things that they offer, I think you're going to find that emotional response. Because if I were to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is XYZ? And you tell me a 10, that's emotional. If you tell me, well, I don't know, it's a 3, I really don't care about it. Well, I can't say I can fix that. I can say, you might want to reconsider how you perceive that. But I think that we want those that unfiltered emotion to come out so that we can allow them to make that emotional decision of purchasing what we have to offer, which is to help and to make an impact in their business and their team.
I mean, so often we talk about the importance of questions,
Mm-hmm.
but then it becomes like rote learning. I mean, you ask, what's your peak seasons? What are your hours? I
Yeah.
mean, things like that, just inane stuff. Um, I love the fact, I mean, you talk about the rapport, the relevancy, and the relationship.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, how do you get past the basic report stuff and really get into relevancy? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that, for me, I follow my sales system. And I think this is also a part, maybe this is another session that we do, Speed, but I just did a sales class this morning from 9 to 12. So I have this 12-part series that I do, and it's people from all different industries. And when I ask people to rank their sales system on a scale of 1 to 10, in other words, having the prospecting, contacting, presenting, setup, follow up, sales activities mapped out, defined, and scheduled, and this was only week 2 of the program. So they're getting into it. Most of them ranked it as between a 2 and a 5, like an F. So it's weird. They have all the product details, all the service details. So if they sell furniture, if they sell HVAC, they have all the details about the equipment. They can tell you everything about it. They can't tell you how their sales system works. And when I say sales system, it's not the system after the sale is made when you're processing that order or the account or the request. I'm talking about the pre-sale, which is all selling. They don't have everything mapped out, including their questions. And so a lot of it, when you hear people talk about their sales system or their questions, they do this, like it's all up here, which is a great start. But to turn it into something powerful and dynamic and moving, We got to get it onto paper. We got to wordsmith it, and we got to practice it with each other.
Mhm.
I think that that's one of the biggies is, use the people you work with to practice asking these questions and presenting and working in these questions. I think it's huge. We need to practice that skill a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of folks are so enamored with their questions, question number three, that they don't listen to the answers to questions one and two.
Yes, and because a lot of questions, okay, that's a good point. A lot of questions asked in the field by sales professionals, regardless of industry, are very checkbox item. Ask them this, then this, then this. So they're really trying to just get through it, not get into it. And that's where I think that we miss it. We have to create questions that we cannot wait to ask them. Like as soon as it prompts me, I'm like, oh, I want to ask the one about selling. I want to ask the one about strategic planning. I want to ask the one about their people, leadership. I get excited to ask the questions. I don't rush through the questions. I want to set the stage to ask the question correctly so that it is relevant, so they understand that what I have is what they need. And I've also done research beforehand. So my system with prospecting, you want to prospect to decide who you're going to contact. And it's going to establish a lot of the dialogue and researching them first. I even researched to try and find out who they're currently using for certain things, who my competition is that's already got them. They already landed the sale, you know? So, but I have a question for that too. So we'll come back to that. But I have a question that will elicit from your client and prospect all the things that your competition isn't doing right. I have a question for that, but I just wanted to give you a chance. I was on a roll there, Speed. Um, so for one thing is I think that when we look at our questions, if they're going to differentiate us, they're going to differentiate us, to our clients and to our prospects. We're always being compared in sales. So when we show up, we're being prepared on the questions that we ask. We're being prepared on, or compared, excuse me, on our delivery. You got to think, I guess I'm of this mindset that anytime I go in to meet with a client or a prospect, specifically a prospect, somebody that's looking to buy something, there's likely somebody that's been there before me and likely somebody that'll come in after me that are trying to get that same person as their client or customer or guest. And then that can also happen with your client. That's why it's good to continue to ask questions of your clients so you can keep them. But when I go in and I'm meeting with a prospect, somebody who hasn't become my client yet, I just know that they're comparing me to everybody that's talked to them beforehand. So I don't just want to make statements. I don't just want to ask questions. My real outcome when I'm with somebody is not to make a sale, not to make a buck, but to make an impact. And so I always have to ask myself these questions about my questions. Are my questions impactful? Is it creating an impact? Or is it just creating yeah, here's my market. Yeah, here's my top clients. Here's my industry. I want to go deeper with them on the emotional side. I want them to really share more with me. Um, and it's also important too, when you're creating your questions, you have to remember that when you're meeting with somebody, and I think we'd all agree on this episode, that face to face is always the most important, although it's not always optimal. I speak all over the country, so I may have to do Zoom sessions, but seeing somebody face to face is huge. But we still have to ask questions. When I'm talking to a prospect, I always keep in mind two things about questions. The person asking the most questions in that appointment or your presentation guides the conversation. And so as sales drivers, if we want people to get in our sales vehicle and drive with us, we're guiding where they're going. We're guiding guiding them to the destination of what they need. And so I always look at it like I want to have enough questions to keep the conversation going in the correct direction. It's great that your clients ask you questions because that means they don't understand something and you need to explain it. But in addition to guiding the conversation, here's the other thing, is that the person asking the most questions guides that conversation, but the most confident person wins the conversation. And so you have to feel very confident about your questions. You also have to be able to anticipate some of the answers that might come. We'll go back to the 10 and 0 questions. If I ask Speed on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is leadership? And he says it's 10. And I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank your current leadership development program? And he says it's a 9.5. Now, that may or may not be accurate, but that's his perception. You're finding that somebody might not need what you have at that moment. And so when we're asking these questions, now I can dive deeper into that and say, can you tell me a little bit more about your leadership development program and what does it mean to you? So we can ask questions, more questions, because we want to guide the conversation. But initially, those 10 and 0 questions let you know where the gap is. The bigger the gap from their conceptual idea to their steptual implementation, the bigger the gap, the higher likelihood that you will land a client, and that they will need you. Now, the reason we want to have our big three, the three things we offer, is so that when we're asking these questions, we can also ask questions about our other big services. Most buyers only know us for one thing. We may have big three. We may have 6 or 7 other services and products we offer. I have a lot that we offer, but I need to be known for leading, planning, and selling. And if my questions spark that emotional response from them, there's a high likelihood that even in the prospect stage, they could refer me to somebody else. I mean, how would you like somebody to refer you new business or new prospects that hasn't even bought from you yet? That's how you know you're asking great questions, not generic questions. So there's always an opportunity to revisit and enhance your questions. Again, I would start with the 10 and 0 questions. What is going to get them a high mark on anything that you offer? What are they going to rank high? What are they going to rank low? And fill that gap for them. Now, if you are working with somebody or trying to work with somebody that has been using one of your competitors, okay, for whatever service or product you offer, here's a question that I found. When I ran a media company in Southern California, I had a list of questions. So I created a sales manual. So you should have a sales manual for your sales operation. If sales is the lifeblood of your organization, you should have a manual for it. Okay, here's how we operate sales. Here's our way. And it can have a lot of your best questions in there so people can rehearse it. For me, when I was meeting with somebody and I knew they used another post house, so we were a post-production facility. We worked on TVs, we worked on movies, television, commercials. Now we were the third phase in the production line. So there was pre-production, production, post-production. We were post. So we did a lot of the editorial, the duplication, the replication, the motion graphics, things like that. In fact, our big three were duplication, replication, editorial. But when I knew they were using somebody, you're probably in the same boat that I am. You don't like to talk bad about the competition. Don't do that. Never comes across good. However, your prospect can talk bad about them. They can tell you everything that you need to know. Here's how I did it. One of the best questions, I hope you're ready for this. One of the best questions I ever asked is you have to identify who you are. Like, what do you offer? We were a post-production facility, post house. So if you were using one of my competitors and I knew it, which if you weren't using me, you were using one of them, I would ask this question. I would say, hey, Speed, if you could design the optimal relationship with a post house, with an HVAC company, with a radio station, with a digital marketer, whatever your line item is, that's who you are. If you could design the optimal relationship with us, with our type of company, what would that look like? That question was always answered by the things that the competitor wasn't doing exactly up to speed. So they might say stuff like, optimally, I would really like response time to be improved. Okay, that means that I can start asking questions about response time and let them know how good we are. Obviously not lying. If we had great response time, I would let them know about that. They may say that, some of our orders aren't correct. Some of them aren't on time, whatever the case is. Typically, when you ask that question about the optimal relationship, because again, we want to build relationships. We want to build rapport, build the relevancy, build relationships. When we get into that side of things with building their relationship and they're talking to us about the competitors, when they are talking about the competition, they are trusting you. And so when you ask that question and they share it and you hear those open gaps, that's when you can really promote some of the deeper deliveries that you have. We're very good with response time. Our customer service is absolutely amazing. We have an unbelievable team. So as you're building these questions to build rapport, questions to build relevancy around what you offer, questions to build relationships where you want to feel that bond with them, I would say to properly wordsmith them and make sure that you're getting that emotional response out of there, because each of these questions, the rapport leads to the relevancy. Once you've built rapport, they want to hear more about your company, what you offer, the relevancy. Once they understand that it's relevant to them, then they're going to be open for building that relationship, a relationship of buyer to seller or sales driver to client, sales driver to the consumer. And so your questions need to continue to build that relationship along. You don't want to have questions that are just checkbox items. I think that's very dangerous for sales professionals. Um, I think that, as you're building out your questions, try and identify as you're building the questions out, what really differentiates you from your competition. At the post-production facility, quite simply, ours was response time and our team. Oh, and our systems. We had a lot of stuff going for us. Again, we were duplication, replication, editorial. So was a lot of our competitors. But we opened the door up through questions to be able to promote some of the things that we knew were crucial in our industry, especially these fast turnaround times of TV commercials. So, I wouldn't underestimate the power of questions. You know, I, I've also got a question that is rarely asked from sales professionals to their own clients and even to their prospects. And I would ask you this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important are referrals? Ooh, this got your attention, didn't I? Most people tell me they're a 10 out of 10. That's how important they are. Well, then I'm going to ask you this question. One sales professional, one sales driver to the next. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank your current referral tracking system? Which means you have a collection of processes that together combine and form a system for making sure that you're increasing your referral business. When I ask salespeople on a scale of 1 to 10, how important are referrals, they all say 10. Some of them yell out 11, 12, emotionally yell it out. Nobody says, I guess a 10. Everybody says 10, 11. They get fired up. But when I ask them, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank your referral tracking system? They usually look down and go, I don't have one. I would venture to say that most of you would rather operate in the warm market than the cold market. Your questions are a pathway to being in the warm market 100% of the time. I used to operate in the cold market. Never liked it. Never liked it. The warm market, so much better. And I live here in Minnesota. I understand the cold market. I understand what it's like when it's negative 25. I really get it. That's without the wind chill. I'll always take the jacuzzi. I'll always take the warmer weather. When you're asking the right questions and you're building that rapport, you're building relevancy, you're building relationships, you will build referrals. So don't underestimate the power of your questions, because every question you ask, they are thinking, would I refer this person to ask that same question to somebody that I care about, somebody that I like, another colleague of mine? Your questions are dictating how often you're getting referred. So if you're saying, well, I'm not getting a lot of referrals, I 100% update your questions, enhance your questions. In fact, you can even send me your questions. This is going to be crazy. Send me your questions and I'll take a look at them. I'll give you a response back and say, maybe wordsmith it like this. Here's how I would ask that question. And once you have these questions that go from rapport to relevancy to relationships with that person, and then hopefully extend to another person called a referral, I would practice them. I would practice asking questions. Just as an actor practices their lines, practice it so it becomes natural. You don't want to practice on your prospect. You don't want to practice on your client. You want to actually practice with people that give you some feedback. Say, hey, I'm not really believing that delivery, or here, work on it like this, or maybe if you say it like this. So I think the moral of this story, this whole episode, is there's so much more coming from a great question than just the answer. You're looking to build rapport. You're looking to build the relevancy. You're looking to build relationships, which could lead to referrals. But at the end of the day, are they trusting you? The questions are going to say a lot about you as a sales professional. And that's why I think that most questions, those checkbox questions, really mean that salesperson is just a checkbox salesperson, where it's perceived that you may be out there just for the sale. But that's not you. You're an impact player. And so you want your sales questions to reflect the impact that you want to make. In fact, I would even say that while you're asking these questions, share with them what impact you want to make. whether you're selling radio or TV or digital or HVAC or anything retail, whatever it is that you're selling. I mean, I've coached every single industry you can imagine. Tell them the impact you want to make. I want to help you. My goal is to impact and significantly increase your revenue and your reach. Something along that. They need to know what you're standing for them. They need to know what the impact is, not just that you're making money on this, not just that you need a sale, but you as a sales driver want to make an impact. And so I would say that, now is the time to really craft your questions. Now, the other thing you have to keep in mind, you got to get to the point quick too. Okay? You can't rush it, but you got to get to the point. I just attended a wedding. It's going to sound like it's not relevant, but it will be relevant in about a minute. I just attended a wedding, and the gal, a close family friend of ours, their daughter is getting married. So she's early 20s, so very early 20s. So Gen Z, she's a Gen Z. Well, Gen Z is infiltrating the workplace, and they're an incredible generation. So I was there at the wedding. Wedding's over, and now it's the reception and the party, and they start playing some music. It was an AC/DC song. Thunderstruck came on. I'm like, hey, this is great. 80s flashback. And the kids were singing it. 30 seconds into the song, it switched to another song. The DJ switched. And I'm like, okay, all right, great. It was actually another 80s song, somehow good. And then there was another song and another song. Every 30 seconds or so, the song switched. So a friend of mine came up and he goes, you're not going to believe this. He goes, the DJ was telling me that this TikTok generation, that's what she called the Gen Z, she said they can't listen to a full song. Can't listen to a full song because they're constantly scrolling fast, about 30 seconds. And so these wedding DJs now have these 30-second songs. Right when I was getting into the song, and I might have sang, I got cut off and I went to the next song. Here's what my point is. The buying playing field is switching right before our eyes. If your questions aren't switching with the buyers, you're going to miss out, and not enough people will get in your sales vehicle and drive off with you. Now, I'm not saying to ask questions quickly, but I am saying that there are some salespeople that take a long time to get to the point. I build rapport pretty quick because I've already researched them a little bit. In fact, I don't know, maybe many of you do this. Do you guys look on LinkedIn to learn about the person that you're contacting? LinkedIn is awesome, especially the bottom of it. So the top of LinkedIn, it talks about where they're working currently and where they have worked. The bottom of LinkedIn talks about where they went to school, if they served in the military, charity organizations they believe in. Top of it talks about what they do. The bottom of it talks about who they are. You want to have good rapport? Talk about the bottom. I mean, don't make stuff up. But I went to USC. If I see somebody went to USC, I'm bringing that up during the talk. I served in the Marine Corps. If I see somebody as a veteran, I'm bringing that up. I've been a caregiver for my wife through 4 battles of cancer and when she died of cardiac arrest, and I did CPR, and the first responders brought her back after being gone for 15 minutes. I see anybody in the world of cancer or heart issues, I'm reaching out to them. Why? Because the bottom of LinkedIn should really be at the top, because that's the things that mean the most to them. Top of it, just like ours, tells us what we do. You want to find out who they are. That's where you can actually build rapport faster. Then you can get to the relevancy quicker, and then you can build relationships deeper. Then, when they find out who you are through your questions, not just what you do, then you increase your likelihood of referrals. And most importantly, an unsolicited referral. How great is that? The only thing better than referrals, which is the #1 way to know you're doing a great job out there, that people believe in you and trust you, the only thing better than a referral is an unsolicited referral, one you didn't ask for. And that's all possible with your questions. I think that your questions have to make an impact. Your questions have to create that emotional response. They have to be thought-provoking. When you ask questions, they shouldn't just go, yeah, X, Y, Z. You should see this. You should even have them say this. You probably have this too. You probably have many questions where you get this response, but this is a good way of gauging it. Where they do this number here, they go, that's a good question. I never thought of it like that before. Be that sales driver. Don't be the checkbox sales driver. Be the impact sales driver and create your questions to get the responses that you need. That's how important questions are. Now, I think as you start this journey, you might want to look at the questions that are being asked in your office, in your workplace. Take a look at all the best practice questions. Maybe even ask some of your sales team members. Say, hey, what questions you asking? Let's write these down, and then start wordsmithing it. I think you'd probably agree that words are critically important. And so the questions that are being asked, infuse the words in that mean the most to your audience, whether it's revenue or reach or helping their people, or helping their community is always a big one. So I think, create your questions based on those categories of rapport, on relevancy for what you do, and relationships, and continue to practice those, continue to exercise and flex those muscles on asking the questions. The best part about selling is making an impact, and we have to do it in a genuine, natural, and sincere way. And the reality is, I always use this litmus test. Think about the person you love the most in life, or that loves you the most. For a lot of us, we're going to be like, that's our mom, right? Mom's right up there. When you look at sales tactics that you're being taught, or you're hearing sales techniques, always ask yourself, would I talk to my mom that way? Would I ask her a question like that if she needed what we had? Would I do some of the tactics that are taught out there? And a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, you hear some sales tactics or questions that are asked, and you're like, hey, that's not bad. I just wouldn't say it to my mom. So you want to maintain the genuineness, the sincerity, and the honesty that build trust. And your questions are going to dictate a lot of how that comes across. So, again, I would look at right now as the optimal time to refine your questions. You should get so excited about it, you want to get in the field again. Now, here's another great question. Most of us have existing clients. Okay. Most of us have what I would say is more opportunity with those existing clients. In other words, you might hear a phrase like, is there more money on the table? Almost every sales professional says yes. And they do say it about their existing clients, obviously from their prospects, because they haven't bought from me yet. But the existing clients, I would recommend getting out with them at least twice a year to interview them. Ask them questions about where they're taking their company. What are their future goals? What are their needs relevant to what you use in the next 1 year, 3 year, and 5 years, so that as your organization continues to enhance its products, its services, its offerings, that they can be in alignment with the needs of your clients. It's also a great opportunity for you to share it with them or ask them if they know about your other services. Some of them may not. So you may have 100 clients that use you for one thing, even though you have a big 3. Now, the reason you want to ask them questions about your other elements that they're not using yet, these other offerings, the other products and services, is they can't refer you to people that need that unless they know you do it. Most salespeople make a false assumption that people know what they're doing. In other words, that they know everything that I sell. Yeah, he's my client. I'm his leadership coach. So of course he would know I do planning. Of course he would know I do selling. Of course he knows I do team building and communication. Well, that's risky, assuming he knows that. When I ran the post-production company, we were duplication and replication editorial. We had a long-standing client that had a relationship with our facility for many, many years. He was good friends with the owner. He would come in and run his own jobs on our equipment. Nobody did that, but he was allowed to. So he did all of his own duplication there. So he knew us as duplication. One day, in our own machine room, where all of our engineers and our equipment was, all of our tape operators, I heard him pick up the phone and dial our competitor right from our house. Dial the competitor to book an edit session. Remember, we are duplication, replication, editorial. He was calling them, and I hung up the phone on him. And he said, Erik, what are you doing? And I said, Mike, what are you doing? I said, why are you scheduling an edit session when we have 5 high definition edit suites here? And this is what he said, and it has stuck with me for the last 18 years. He goes, I didn't know. I didn't know. And this was somebody who was good friends with the owner of the company. Didn't know. This is somebody we saw almost on a daily basis. He didn't know. We never asked him the question if he knows what our big 3 services are. Just assumed he knew. Just assumed. I think a great interview question is, you should ask your clients if they know everything you do. Say, what do you know about us? What services do we have that you're aware of? They will likely say the one they're currently purchasing from you. And the vast majority will only say that one. They might say, I think you do this, but if they're not sure, they can't refer you. So with the right questions, not only can you get referred to people, you can increase the amount of referrals you have by over 300%. These are all from questions. So I would say to be the wordsmith, be the architect of new questions, great sales questions that elicit that emotional response that allow you to build the rapport, build the relevancy, and build the relationships needed so that you start developing unsolicited referrals so that you never have to go cold again. Your questions can get you out of the cold market permanently. Now, if you prefer the cold market, that's fine, but I'm sure nobody on this call is waking up saying, I can't wait to make a cold call. But you should be waking up saying, I can't wait to ask these questions. And so I don't know if we have any questions, Brian. Was there any questions that came in? Speed, were there any questions that you guys had? I think I just went on I think I just lost 2 pounds going on that run about questions. I just wanted to kind of pop it in there and see if you had any thoughts on what I was talking about.
I tell you what, I've got a page and a half of handwritten scratching notes as we went. Um, the one thing you hit on early that I had not really thought of it from this perspective, which goes back to what you said a while ago. I didn't think of that before,
Yeah.
is when you were talking about the sales driver. Okay, most
Mhm.
of us, particularly rookie and some
Right.
not so rookie, you think sales driver is I'm moving it forward because I'm telling you about my stuff, my things, and everything I've got available. It is so much more powerful, as you mentioned. You're really in the driver's seat when you're asking and not telling.
100%. Yeah, and I think there's so many sales professionals, they're even during the presentation, they're talking too much. They should be asking more questions. It allows us to listen. But you really got to have that. You got to have that balance. You got to have that balance in making some statements. Let me tell you about what we do, and then the balance of asking some questions. And so, I would even say for people on this call right now, the next presentation you do, take a look at how many things you state and how many questions you ask. Um, because it is interesting that most studies show that people feel that the majority of salespeople talk too much. Now, of course, here I am on a sales episode talking a lot, but if I really did have any one of you one-on-one with me and we were just talking, I would ask a lot of questions because I want to get to know you, get to know what makes you tick, get to know about your company, get to know how I can help. But I think it's just weighted so heavily that most of them are making more statements and presenting rather than asking questions and making a connection, right? We're stating our content, but we ask questions and make a connection. And that's the whole purpose of presenting is we all have content to share. We do. I have leadership content. You have radio content. They have HVAC content. They have healthcare content. It's content is content. We all have it. That's what we present on. But the objective of presenting is to move from content to connection. And the only way we can make a connection is by asking questions. We can't make the connection just simply by making statements, the same repetitive statements. Here's how good we are. Here's what we do. We have 5,200 five-star Yelps, and we have this, and here's a testimonial. Maybe just sometimes ask them, what are you looking for? How can I help? Or the 10 to 0 questions, or the optimal question, how would you design that relationship, the optimal relationship? What would it look like?
That,
So I
yeah.
think as you're presenting, remember, you have to have that balance of, selling is a lot like dating. So if you're out on a date and all you're doing is talking about yourself, you're probably not going to get a second date. Okay. If you're a salesperson and you're probably just talking all about your company, you're probably not going to get a second appointment. And a lot of it's going to be about the questions. We really have to, here, I'm gonna say it in its most basic rudimentary form. Questions show that we care. If you have bad questions, it shows you don't care much. If you don't ask any questions, you don't care at all. If you have great moving questions and you listen to the answers, it'll show people that you actually care, and that helps to build trust.
Eric, I was gonna pop on as well, and
Sure.
again, just Well done, and a reminder that if you have a question for Erik, send them in our direction. I know we've gotten a couple. One just came in on chat, and we're a little delayed since we are a live event stream here. But Jen's gotten a couple on email as well. So, on that point, before I go to a question, I thought when you were like, if you get a reaction,
Yeah,
an emotional reaction from your client or your prospect. I mean, that I'd toss on the chat immediately. That was like, you. There are days and there are meetings that we all are like, man, we were on our game or we were
yeah,
off our game, right? When you
100%.
get a reaction like that, that's going to build your momentum so well because
Cool.
you know that you're not just going to make a potential sale, but
Yeah,
you are now crossed from potential salesperson to advisor
Right.
to
Mhm.
liaison to
yeah.
trusted advisor, and I think that is so important. I love that.
Hey,
um oh, go ahead. I'm going to ask you a
oh
question
no, I
too.
was just going to say your questions have to get them to start. They're going to be thinking two things when you're asking questions. How do I get away from this person, or how do I buy from this person? That's it. And
Yeah.
that's it. So you got to say your question should lead it up to where we don't want to sell anything. We just like when people buy. That's the truth about sales. So if you're asking questions that are generic, or maybe they're not updated, or your heart's not into them, they may be sitting there going, geez, how long is this session? If you're asking the right questions and getting that response where they're doing this and whew,
Yeah.
and you're seeing the body language, they're trying to figure out ways to buy from you.
Yeah. uh okay. Okay, I'm going to ask this question from Pam, because it's the first one I see on my chat here, and Jen's sending over some as well. Okay, this is an industry specific question. Industry specific questions for clients that believe they work only on referrals. So here's an example. A lumber yard says that their contractors drive their business,
Yeah,
right? So we have no control over that. Our contractors drive our business.
sure. Yeah. So the question, okay, so should you, I guess the thing to look at there is if that business isn't in control of driving your business and someone else is, you got to talk to those contractors too. That would be the first thing, right? So now the contractor may not advertise and do the things the way we're doing, but here's what I would say. If the contractors feed the business, then the business wants to take care of the contractors and the business wants more contractors, is what I'm guessing. So when I hear things like that, I gotta say, okay, so they're automatically getting a lot of referrals. You want to take care of that referral source. So they're not trying to reach customers, they're trying to reach contractors. So everything that you're offering that's relevant to them is about maintaining those relationships, the rapport, the relationships, the relevancy with the contractors. So I think that, you know, that's why we have a big three. We offer three big things that produce most of our revenue, and then we have other offerings. You got to find in there what means the most to that business owner. But here's what I would also ask that business owner. Okay, are they happy with their current sales, or would they like to increase? Guaranteed, they're going to say they want to increase. They're going to want to increase. The majority of people out there, when you say, do you want to grow your business or keep it status quo? They're going to go status grow. So a lot of times we do have to be a little creative. And that's why, Pam, and that's a great question. That's why our questions have to create that relevancy. So if we're talking to this business owner who goes through contractors for their work, just like this business owner who goes through his or her sales team for their work or through marketing for their work, we have to switch our questions up based on our audience. And that's part of the relevancy. I think that's the most relevant part. I sell for within and to almost every single industry. So our healthcare industry, they have patients. Our co-ops have members. Our businesses have customers or clients, and they also have referral sources. And so we need to be able to say, hey, maybe we do some events for your referral sources. So I think it's just about being relevant and just going, okay, wait a minute, it's okay to switch your questions up and really streamline them and hone them in for what's most important to that business or that healthcare industry or whoever. I think we have to ask those right questions. And maybe the questions we're asking, it's not relevant to them. So we just switched a little bit. And Pam, I'm happy to help you out on that.
Hey,
I got.
Erik,
Oh, go ahead to speak.
uh,
No, please.
I think we do a terrific job on our first meeting with a client to
Yeah,
do the needs analysis, the CNA or whatever you want to call it.
sure.
And we craft our questions, we go through it, tell me about your business, how'd you get into it, whatever, tell me
Yeah.
what. And then we never ask them another question. Every time we meet them from that point forward, we're telling. How do you
Yeah.
keep the conversation going throughout? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that one of the things we have to find out their hot buttons. We have to find out. It's so important to find out their goals. Their goals are very important. So, if we're not asking the questions about their short-term and long-term goals, we've missed the mark. How can we truly help them? How can we show we care if we're just trying to get in the present with a sale when we should be getting into the future with their goals? So that's a biggie. If a salesperson isn't talking about their client's goals, they're not forward thinking. They're stuck in the present, and people will leave you in the present. They're going to leave you right there. So I always like to find out where they want to be in the next 90 days or 6 months or a year, 3 year, 5 years, because then I automatically start differentiating myself based on those questions that I'm in this for the long haul with you. That being said, sometimes there's a sales cycle. Sometimes they have a contract. That's where your follow-up touches are going to be very, very important. The relevancy of your follow-up touch is touch point itself, and the questions you ask within those follow-up touches are critical to keep the conversation going. Because as we've said before, you don't want to send a follow-up touch and just be like, "Hey, I'm just checking in."
Yeah.
That's checkbox. That's cookie cutter. Everybody's doing that. But you can say, "Hey, while you're considering us for your radio needs, while you're considering us for this, I wanted to share this with you." The more relevant information you can share with them, the better. And that's how to keep the conversation going. So I might send you something, Speed, and say, I think this will be relevant for you. Then I can follow that up and say, hey, I wanted to make sure you got that email I had sent you, the attachment, the video I sent you, the article, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. So
Mhm.
we can continue the conversation. We have to stop selling and start sharing. And we got to start closing and
Yeah.
start opening. And the only way to open is with questions. Open it up.
So actually, this is perfect. I've got two that I want to try to get to. This one came from Brad. I actually got an email. Brad said, I go after large national accounts.
Mhm.
How do I catch attention virtually through email, at least initially, through questions? I get it, right? Because a
Yeah.
lot of questions, it's like, and I identify with Brad a little bit that I get it, right? That we ask good questions on a call but how
Yeah.
do you do a lot of questioning on virtually on emails, or do you just kind of steer away from that?
I
Other
think
than what time and how much money do you have?
yeah, and now that one you may want to ask at the very end.
Yeah, no, right, yeah, yeah.
But here's
Yeah.
here's the thing. Obviously, questions are harder to ask and answers are harder to get in the cold market.
Yes.
Here's a great question. The people that you're contacting in the cold market are in somebody's warm market.
Mhm.
I would ask this question of your clients and of your prospects. Do you know anybody that I could help make an impact with my big three? Because every person that clients and prospects have 100 on their forehead. They know 100 people that you don't know. Their warm market is your cold market. So when we're operating in the cold market, it's like working out without warming up. And so it makes everything infinitely harder. But
Yeah.
you're just going to have to ask more questions in the cold market. But Brian, if you referred me somebody, it collapses my sales cycle. And
Yes.
if you refer
Yep.
me somebody and transfer that trust, I'm able to ask some of the more relevant questions even sooner, right? So you may actually connect me through email when now we've transferred trust. So the biggest question I would have is, Brian, do you have anyone that you know interested in leadership development, strategic planning, and sales excellence? I'm not actually asking you that question right now, Brian, although feel free to send me referrals.
Yeah, yeah,
What I
of course.
am saying is there's a better way to skin that cat.
Yeah.
And if we're just trying to figure out like what do we ask in an email, that means we're in the cold market. Cold market, you just have to quadruple and then some the amount of touches you have. So I think the best question we could ask is, do you know anybody that I could help make an impact in these three areas? And stats show that only 11% of salespeople ask that question, but 91% of buyers would send you a referral. So again, the questions we ask are going to dictate the success that we earn.
All right, and you may have answered this question. I don't know exactly who this one came from, but this individual said, "We're not in B2B. We're in B2C,
Yeah.
right? So working directly with individuals. So it's really hard for us to do some pre-research on them.
Hmm.
Although we can all stalk these
Okay.
days with
Yeah.
AI. But hey, if you're brand new to
Yeah.
this individual, how do you how do you try to build rapport as quick as possible
Well,
with folks that are more B2C?
yeah, let's just say the B2C side, there's, you can't go to their personal, I mean, you could, but if they had a personal website, yeah, it's going to be harder to find the research out. However, you
Yeah.
can find the research out in the demographics. And I think that that's the important part, that, these consumers here, they're not businesses, but they are consumers. There's going to be a lot of research out there on their trends and what they're looking for. So if the trends are saying, here's what's trending, X, Y, and Z, and you're like, okay, I'm going to stick with A, B, and C because that's how I've always done it. You're going to miss the mark. So, for a lot of the stuff that we do, mostly it's business to business for us, but we have a lot of B2C from the standpoint of some of it's one-on-one coaching and some of it are book sales. And so or attending events. So what we look for is we try and find the research that would just give me a little insight into that person. And nowadays, I mean, the reality is that you can find certain demographics online. I would also promote what you're doing, your big three, on social media like crazy, because the more people that see it on Facebook and LinkedIn, they may inquire about it, but if they don't know what you do, they can't buy what you have. So, I still think that we can ask those questions. Now, the other thing too is that 100%, just like the B2B market, but B2C, you want to create that word of mouth buzz. You want to have that experience where they're sending you unsolicited referrals. Now, on your website, when people go there, you can have certain questions that are asked there. What's most important to you? What's most relevant to you? I would even say do a survey on LinkedIn or Facebook for your demographic. If you're interested in this, or this, what's most important to you?
No, this is just perfect. Just phenomenal stuff. So
As
hey,
sales drivers, we're part bloodhound and part detective.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I really think you, by referring to it as a sales driver in this respect, it just makes so much sense from the standpoint you really are driving the conversation forward.
Yes,
by asking the right questions.
You are. And the thing about it, the beauty of it is that if we're sales drivers, there's a trifecta. There's sales drivers, those who sell. There's a sales vehicle, what we sell. And there's a sales engine, how we sell. Those three things have to operate in complete synchronicity, right? They have to be aligned. The what we sell in our vehicle are five things for every organization. It's our products, our services, our systems, our solutions, and our team. We sell those things. We always sell our team. We have the greatest team ever. We sell our solutions. We can help you with that. We sell our systems. When you buy this radio ad or buy this, here's how it works. And then you have your products and services. We have events, we have radio, we have TV, we have digital, we have whatever we have. It falls into the vehicle. People buy the vehicle, right? They're buying stuff from the vehicle. The engine just gets the vehicle moving, and the sales driver's got to put the pedal to the metal. And the way you do that is asking questions, building rapport, building relationships, that relevancy. That trifecta of sales, the driver, the vehicle, and the engine all have to be humming, and you have to build each one out independently, but where they all connect. So we have to train our salespeople. We have to hone our sales skills, which is our sales engine, our prospecting, contacting, presenting, setup, follow-up, our mindset. And then we also have to know what we sell, our products, our services, our systems, our solutions, and our team. And that trifecta there, you master those three things, and you're going to ask questions about all of that stuff. You may even say, hey, what do you expect? Speed, what do you expect from a sales trainer like me? Hey, what do you expect from somebody in digital marketing like me? These are great questions. It'd be weird not to ask that. You know what I mean?
And you're bringing it home by saying, like me. I mean, you're
like me. Like, what do you want from me? I ask, okay, I do one-on-one coaching. I ask people, what do you expect from a coach? It'd be weird not to.
Yeah.
All right, I'll coach you. I have no clue what you need, no clue what you want, but let's get started,
Well, and the big thing you said makes so much sense is don't assume. Don't, when you have someone who says, I didn't know you did that. Oh my God. Yeah. Opportunity missed.
Drop the ball.
Yeah.
Well, gang, it has been an hour with Erik, and I want to make sure that we wrap up. I know it went by quick. Erik, you may still pass out though, so maybe some water would be good. But hey, we want to wrap up. But before we do, obviously, Erik, you have a lot of wonderful content on 10 Minute Trainer Network. Erik, I'll let you close it out to give a spiel on who you are, what you do, and where folks can continue to watch content and what you're covering.
Hey, first and foremost, thanks to everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the questions. And to the whole 10-Minute Trainer Network team, you guys are awesome. It's always a pleasure working with you. You can find me. I have a couple different websites. Erik Therwanger, Erik Therwanger, Therwanger. You'll probably have to play that back.com. That's a lot of my speaking stuff. My business to business coaching and leading, planning, selling is at thinkgreat90.com. And on both sites, there's an info line so you can reach out. And yes, I will get back to you. So I hope you really utilize this session to be the architect, to craft some amazing questions that move people. And like Speed said, drive people to where they need to be. You need to be their driver.
Fantastic. Hey, Erik, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Awesome working with you guys. We'll see you on the other side.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a plan, Erik. We appreciate it. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
See ya.